messing with you.
I think that's
How are you feeling?
Didn't think we could run that
How are you feeling?
All right, good evening. We are here for a workshop, discussion of the prohibition of left-hand turns from Main Street onto Ware Street. Who's up?
Sure, I'll take a lead. And with all due respect, and I probably didn't make this clear. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wasn't that I suggested that the current prohibition be eliminated. It was to have a discussion to see what might be a possible solution to the problem there. And research back does not indicate who and what were the determining factors for this prohibition, but it was actually a neighborhood action. Some people in the audience may know more about it than we had, but we couldn't get any council record because it was back that far. Obviously, it was a result of the Russell Street improvements in the bridge and trying to get people, we'd like them to take Russell Street, but in order to cut through to go to either Bates or St. Mary's, people used Ware Street, and that's when the prohibition occurred. The people who are objecting to the Ware Street or wanted us to examine it, their primary motivation is now that Ware Street's not the cut-through, Mountain Avenue has become the cut-through. Even though it's a steep incline off of Main Street, it's used in order to cut through to get to either Bates College or to St. Mary's and other points there. So I think that what this workshop should explore is some of the ideas. I know we have some of the residents here to talk about ideas, but Jack Clifford, who's a resident of Ware Street, brought up a potential solution that I wanted to run by everyone, and obviously this would have to be looked at by the police and others and the administration, is a ban on left-hand turns on Mountain Avenue as well. That would really force people to use probably the proper means of getting to that area by using Russell Street and then turning either on College Central or Lafayette even and coming back to St. Mary's. So, but again, we may even hear some other better solutions as well. And again, it's, again, scheduled for discussion to consider whether we wish to make any changes or whatever, but that's been what I want to, and I appreciate the administration and council scheduling this. And again, the neighbors who wanted to see us explored were the ones obviously who were impacted by Mountain Avenue being the alternative. So, and again, it's the same reasons that Ware Street was granted that no left-hand turn is because of traffic trying to cut through and usually going faster through a residential neighborhood than they should. And I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions from the council? Ed, Dennis? All right, I'll open it up to the public. If anyone would like to speak, please step forward. Please also state your name and your address.
Either one.
Pick your poison, John.
John Butler, 20 Ware Street, and Councilor Lyson, I actually had a little speech here about no left turn on Ware Street. It's a safety issue, but I think if you are talking about taking Mountain and making it no left turn, I could also support that, because they both are safety issues. I know Ware Street has a lot of young people on with children. We have grandparents with grandchildren like me, and it really became a safety issue. And just let me explain what used to happen in the past. What people did in the past was that they would take a right turn off the bridge and the first left turn on to Ware Street off Main Street to avoid two lights, one at Main Street and one at College. They would speed down the road, and it became a real safety issue. So I am for no left turn on Ware, but I am also for no left turn on Mountain.
Thank you. Dick Wagner, 26 Mountain Avenue.
And I'm glad to hear Mr. Butler with his approval of the possibility of no left turn at Mountain Avenue. The big real problem on Mountain Avenue is it's a steep hill, wintertime, snow, you've got one lane. You start up it and somebody's coming down. Where are they going to go? It's very dangerous. I understand also that there's danger in left turning at Ware Street. I understand that. What I was hoping for initially was to even out where people turn left. You know, half of them turn left at Ware Street, the other half can turn left at Mountain, and then we'd have things a little more under control. I like this new idea, however. Mountain Avenue is the hill up and down is really one. It's a wonderful place for people to speed. They love zipping down Mountain Avenue from Main Street. They probably enjoy climbing Mountain Avenue as well with their turbo jets or whatever it may be. But in any case, the real problem is that sometimes there's parking on both sides of the street down there toward Main Street, but in the winter it is deadly. I don't mean that literally, I hope, but it's just very, very treacherous. I guess those are the main things I wanted to say. Oh, well, the other reason why I felt that Ware Street is the better place to turn left if you have to turn left on either of those two streets is because there's 3 lanes there. There's only 2 lanes on Mountain Avenue, on Main Street when you get to Mountain Avenue. So that's another problem that we on Mountain Avenue have with this. I'm ready to support no left turns on either Mountain or Ware Street, and people should turn left, including I ought to turn left on Russell Street, and if I have to come back a block, I come back a block. And thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Clifford. I live at 14 Ware Street, and I'm afraid that I'm the epicenter of this whole thing. Many years ago, and I can't even tell you the year, I can't even tell you how long ago it was, but my children were young, and there were many, many children, 14, 15 kids within like 5 houses on Ware Street. And one of my neighbors and I decided that we were going to count cars, and we took turns, and I'd sit and count the cars going by and what direction for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and we did this for a week. And we were having over 100 cars an hour coming through Ware Street. And I think John Butler was on the council at the time, and we were able to get that sign up. And we've been a pretty quiet street ever since. So I really would recommend that you not take that sign down, because we're starting to have a lot more kids in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tobias Farnsworth, 19 Ware Street, and I'm in a unique position in that I actually grew up on Ware Street after the sign was placed. Prior to the sign being placed, it was, as others have told you, incredibly dangerous to be a small child on Ware Street, and as such, I would like the prohibition to continue. In regards to Mountain Ave, it seems to me that now that it's been resurfaced, you'll have an even greater speeding problem on Mountain Ave if you do not prohibit left-hand turns there as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy McDonald, 40 Ware Street, and I'm hoping that you will keep the prohibition on Ware Street and also seriously consider the prohibition on Mountain Avenue as well. I've lived on Ware Street for 23 years. I think the sign happened shortly after we've moved in, but I was well aware of the traffic, and we still have traffic. People still turn. In fact, when I came tonight to the meeting, before I came, I decided I would go onto College, onto Russell, onto Maine. So Maine narrows into one lane just before the turn for Ware Street. So if somebody stops to turn onto Ware Street, you've now backed up the traffic coming off the bridge and coming up Main Street. So that's a serious issue, and in fact, it happens, I've seen it happen many times, that people will still try to turn, and the traffic does get backed up. And there are a lot more young kids in both, in the entire neighborhood now, so it is a serious safety issue for the little kids, because we don't really have sidewalks on any of those streets as well. So please consider continuing. Thank you.
My name's Jack Clifford, 14 Ware Street. I've lived there for 62 years. Ware Street has changed with the traffic since I was a kid, believe me. But as Tobias said, and my wife said, back when they were doing the counting, and I think it may have been your mother, Tobias, who was counting with Elizabeth.
Sounds about right.
The 100 cars an hour and speeding. I don't think there's anyone on Ware Street that doesn't have complete sympathy for Mountain Avenue. Believe me, we've been there. And the idea to stop it, stop that left-hand turn off of Main Street onto Mountain Avenue is the solution to this. I was on the committee that dealt with Russell Street. And one of the reasons things were done the way they were done was to funnel traffic that way. That's what it was for, and to keep them out of the neighborhoods. Well, it didn't work, but you can make it work. As for the backups on Main Street, they certainly are. They're one-lane roads, well, 2 lanes, one out and one in at Mountain and at Ware. Car stops to turn, it's backed right up. It backs the traffic up, unless somebody wants to drive into the front yard of the real estate place across from Mountain Avenue. I urge the council to consider very seriously closing off left-hand turns off of Main Street onto Mountain Avenue. Your citizens will appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Okay, back to the council. Any?
So I personally have heard from residents, not just on Ware Street and Mountain Avenue, but also on Benson, who are really opposed to eliminating the prohibition. It's also, I want to just note that it's recommended that the police department does not recommend that the sign be removed either on Ware Street. And I would also support looking at a prohibition for Mountain Avenue as well. So if we could get that, more information on that from the police department, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would certainly go along with the prohibition on Mountain Avenue. I know that turning from Main Street onto Mountain Avenue is a very short distance before you hit that huge hill, in comparison to the other side from Campus Avenue, where they have an area where they can gain speed and get up the hill anyways. But fact of the matter is, I think you'd have a lot of backup. So I would also be inclined to go along with keeping Ware Street the way it is, as well as a prohibition on Mountain Avenue. I think when you come down to it, it'll be a safety concern. Thank you.
Councilor.
Alicia, I think you had.
Yes, sorry. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, from Main Street, you could still take a right-hand turn onto both Ware and Mountain?
Yes.
Okay, so
So
that
if you're
doesn't
going
solve for all
if
of
you're
the
going
speeding, but
northbound,
for reduction of?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just had a question, if I can. Process going forward about a recommendation, obviously the police have to chime in.
If the council's interested in this, we do have a committee that looks at these kinds of things. The police department will take the lead on it, and they'll check with the other departments, and we can have something back to you probably at the next council meeting.
That's great, super, thank you.
Excellent. Yes, okay, thank you very much. Your motion, Councilor
I
Lewis?
do. I'd like to make a motion. We've reversed the agenda items. We're going to take number 2 first, the legal matter. So, motion to enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 405, 6E, to discuss a legal matter.
Second the motion.
Second, all in favor? Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we are going to start the meeting this evening with a little bit of community good news and a little bit of recognition. And today, we would like to recognize Joe Crocker. Joe is hereby recognized for his enthusiastic, creative, and professional performance at the Lewiston Recreation Department. It recently resulted in the Maine Tennis Association naming Lewiston Rec as our 2017 Recreation Department of the Year. Joe, you've vastly enhanced Lewiston's adult and junior tennis. Lewiston Rec now has a junior tennis league, multi-level success, building a youth program, and ever-increasing participation. So, Joe, congratulations and job well done. Okay. Do we have Lewiston Youth Advisory Council here? Or an update? We do not. Okay. And we'll move to the acceptance of the minutes for the February 6th meeting.
So moved.
Councilor Lyson.
Second.
Second by Councilor Cloutier. All in favor? Oh, Councilor Marcotte.
On page 9, I believe there's a typo. Second line, he noted there are still stormwater flow issues with an S as opposed to past tense.
Okay.
Any other corrections to the minutes? All in favor? Unanimous as amended. Okay, we will now move to public comment period. Any member of the public wishing to make comments about Lewiston City Government on an item not on today's agenda may step forward now. Okay, public comment is closed. Roll call.
All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Councilor of Ward 4.
Agenda item number 1.
Item number 1, public hearing on applications for a new liquor license and special amusement permit for live entertainment for Sonder and Drom, 12 Ash Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application and special amusement permit for Sonder and Drom, 12 Ash Street.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilor Cloutier, seconded by Councilor Ray. Questions from the council? To the public? Back to the council. Call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
And Ward 3.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing on a new application for a new liquor license for Angelo's Pizza, 365 Sabata Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application for Angelo's Pizza, 365 Sabata Street.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Cloutier, seconded by Councilor Beam. Questions from the council? The public? Back to the council. Call the roll.
Council from Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the conditional rezoning agreement for the property at 299 River Road. Requested action to approve final passage for the amendment to the conditional rezoning agreement for 299 River Road to conditionally rezone the property, subject to the conditions defined in the rezoning agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor Beam. Council? The public? Back to the council. Call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing and final passage to rezone the property at 381 through 391 Main Street from the Community Business District to the Centerville District. Requested action to approve final passage of the amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code and map to rezone the property at 381 through 391 Main Street from the Community Business District to the Centerville District.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor Ray. Questions from the council? Public? Back to the council. Call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 5.
Item number 5, receiving the recommendations from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board on the fiscal year 2019 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan. Requested action, to receive and review the recommendations from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board regarding the fiscal year 2019 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan.
Good evening. Robert Reed, Chairperson, Lewiston Finance Committee.
Good evening, Bruce Damon, Chair of the Planning Board.
As required by City Council Charter, we make our recommendation. You have it in front of you. I'd like to just point out a couple things on the finance end. First, this is a huge capital improvement budget, obviously, one of the largest we've seen in quite some time. So we understand the needs of the city, but ask that you consider looking to sharpen the pencil with some of the larger projects, whether it be the school appropriation or the new fire station substations as we go forward. If we can find ways to tailor back those projects, even in small amounts, to still have functioning fire stations, but maybe not the prettiest things in the world or the most glamour or all the gadgets, please consider that. The city cannot afford a lot. I say that, but at the same time, I ask you to really speak with Heather and have some real work over the next couple months over the bond market. We believe the bond market may be going up, the interest rates may go up over the next couple of years, and it may be fiscally prudent for the citizens of Lewiston to understand if they have to vote on this, if it exceeds the margins, that it's better to do it now to bite the bullet because of lower interest rates now compared to what you'd pay in a year or two if you wait. So we ask you. One other thing I want to point out in the finance that's very important to several of us there is that we again this year have asked for someone in code enforcement to add staff. Councilor Lewiston has been a huge advocate of this, and we appreciate that. Put another staff person on for the non-resident multi-units where the owner doesn't live there, to do more inspections, more code enforcement, and to really make sure those properties are taken care of in a way that helps the citizens of the city. We believe there's a way that you could have fees in there that would cover the costs of such a person. That's it for me, and after Bruce speaks, we'll leave it open for questions if you have anything specific.
The planning board, as usual, spent a good deal of time. Part of our real mission is looking at the LCIP and making sure that as a planning document, it really does serve the long-term goals of the city. There is no doubt in my mind that the substations for the city's fire department are aged and probably insufficient to support the mission. Fire trucks have gotten more sophisticated, as has most things. They're bigger. There's more demand on the limited personnel that are there, so we need to make sure that those stations meet those requirements to support our first responders, some of our most important employees, in my mind. So moving forward on those, I think is important that we get it started. I don't know if you saw in this Portland paper, Portland now has 6 substations that they feel are insufficient, as bad as ours, if not worse. So we're not alone in this, and it's a mission that we really need to move forward on. The planning board supported the mission of rebuilding the stations on a repeat basis, one at a time, but we were concerned about the amount of money that was proposed and the template that was put out appeared to be more than what was really required for us here. So we've asked that before anything is done permanently, that the real plans be reviewed. I would recommend that the city council establish a subcommittee to work with the fire department, some local citizens and potentially some, maybe a couple of councilors, and to review what's being proposed to make sure that it meets the requirements but isn't a gold-plated testament to inefficiency. The planning board said monies, if if the buildings could be built for less than the allocated amount in the LIC, what was proposed in the LCIP, then any leftover funds would be rolled over solely to the next station, and at the end, if there were funds left, that they would not be allocated. That seemed to be a good approach going forward to make sure that at least something happened. One of the things that concerned me was there was a significant administrative cost associated with it. I think that we could, with a community effort, create one good template. The substations are all very similar in their needs and in what they serve. It wouldn't seem to me that we would need to do 3 complete designs and 3 complete administrations. If we got it right the first time, those costs could be significantly reduced. They were looking at almost 20% of the cost of the projects in soft administrative costs, which on these small stations seem to me to be excessive. We did support it, and we still will, and I think that that's one of the important things. There were other things within the LCIP which we did not support. I know you have those recommendations before you, one of which was the Kennedy Park improvements. That was one that we wish to move down the road at least a year. The parking garage expansion on Chestnut Street, there appears to be no real demand for doing that, and we do not support spending, I think it's $730-some-odd thousand for the planning stage of that, or the almost $11 million to construct it. We don't support that at this time because there does not appear to be any reason to do it. That needs to be pushed off into future years. And it's just important that we try to work toward the existing policy that the city council established of retiring debt. Debt is not any cheaper, and it's not going to be cheaper in the future. We need to be cognizant of trying to maintain that policy in place. As Mr. Reed has so elegantly put, however, sometimes it's better to spend a little now to save a lot later. To think that we're going to slash $8 million out of the proposal for this year to get to the $7+ million that the policy would demand, that's going to be tough. And when we looked at it at planning, we didn't get to that point. I think our proposal slashed $2+ million off from the request, which we felt was easily supported, and pushing it into a future year made sense. But to try to get all the way to the $7.9 million that would be the trigger point for needing the supermajority at the council, that was going to be a reach. And I think we all recognize that. But the planning board really felt that we needed to work at least towards something in between. I think that if the city council can get to a number somewhere in the 10 range, potentially maybe use some unallocated fund balances to fund some different things. I know when we talked to Heather, there was a question about a fire truck. Fire truck's $1 million. However, I think there are excess unallocated fund balances already held by the city that could potentially take that one off the bond request and actually just fund it. So I think there are opportunities for the council to make some decisions about how those funds that currently exist already here are allocated, and what we do with the bond markets. And you know, that was really, we spent a good deal of time looking it over, as we usually do, and we hope that our recommendations and that the recommendations of the Finance Committee are taken seriously, and that we can hope that those recommendations are what eventually happens as far as the budgets for the city.
Thank you,
Opposed? Question? Councilor Ray?
Just a note, and Bill Webster, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the February 12th meeting, while the Finance Committee was meeting, the Facilities Subcommittee of the school committee met and was able to cut some of those capital costs and defer them for some years. So I assume you weren't voting on that kind of revised capital
I am
plan,
aware of
but-
that. I serve on the school department's Performing Arts Committee,
Yep.
so I've been well aware of that. I think that the point is that we might want the best of the best, but we may need to settle for a little bit less in some ways and make something that's functional. The fire stations is very important to us. We're now buying fire trucks today to fit in stations that were built 50 or 100 years ago. And you can't do that. It's costing you more for the fire trucks. So investing in the right stations, you may be able to buy fire trucks moving forward that don't cost you as much because they're more what's put out there and what's manufactured on a regular basis. We're not trying to get one that's 3 feet shorter or that has less water capacity because our buildings won't handle the weight. So just think of all those things as you move forward.
Yep, and I just want to give credit to the Facilities Subcommittee of the school committee because they did, I think they halved it, and I think that's really a good faith effort on their part.
I also serve on that Facilities Committee. Unfortunately, the Planning Board is meeting at exactly the same time. I would love to have been involved, but I do endorse what they proposed. I read through it, and it is, I believe, it's an appropriate application.
Councilor Cludier?
So just in response to Mr. Reed's comment about the additional staff person in code, and ways to pay for that, I serve on the Public Health Committee for the council, and they're in the process of crafting a rental registration program where that funding would go towards funding an extra position in code. So it might be worthwhile for you, Councilor Lyson, or someone else from the Finance Committee to be in touch with Ronnie Parity, who's the chair of that committee, just to sort of talk through what the progress is on that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? To the public? Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 6.
Item number 6, resolve adopting the fiscal year 2019 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan. Requested action that pursuant to Article 6, Section 607D of the City Charter, the City Council hereby approves the resolve adopting the fiscal year 2019 City of Lewiston 5-year capital improvement program as prepared by the City Administrator.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor Cludier. Questions from the council? The public? Back to the council?
Mr.
Oh.
Mayor,
Bruce, sorry, thank you, for the cameras, thank you.
The planning board made a note of making certain that everyone understood that since the review of the LCIP is done on an annual basis, and that's been the way it's been for at least my term on the planning board, which exceeds 10 years, that we're looking at it as a 1-year approval. While it's a 5-year planning document, looking out to see where we would be spending money 5 years from now and approving it seems to be a real reach. So our motion and our recommendation to the council was that anything that we did and that what we were proposing dealt only with the fiscal 2019 budgets, and that those other items that were included in subsequent years were not necessarily being approved as is being funded by or being approved by the planning board. Only this current year, 19, is what we've approved. I think there's some issues there about talking about being able to move forward. You know, for us to think that we could approve projects that are 5 years out, not knowing what our fiscal situation would be or what the needs might change to be in those future years, is a reach. And the planning board's not willing to do that. It was unanimous that the planning board was approving only those items that were in the first year of the LCIP.
Thank you, Mr. Damon. Okay, back to the council. Council Marco.
question for Heather. We heard tonight about the possibility of using the unassigned fund balance. Is there a way to encumber any of those funds going forward? How much is that number?
Well, to answer your first question first, typically what will happen as part of the city administrator's budget is there will be a list of items that qualify, if you will, for what can be, fund balance can be used for the one-time capital outlay or one-time repair needs that are not ongoing in nature. That list is presented to council as part of the budgetary process, and it totals kind of what we would draw and what the remaining fund balance is at that point in time. And then we would move on to see what else the council wanted to do as part of the operating budget deliberations. And if there were any other items to move into the fund balance or to be funded from fund balance, we would take those into consideration as well and add those to the list.
And the second question,
That's, hang on just a second. Let me unbury my pile here.
So the short answer to the first question is we will come back to that throughout the budget process.
because it would be a good way to reduce the need for borrowing.
That's correct. And it also plays into the consideration of the tax rate in terms of items that are requested in the operating budget that might be funded as well from fund balance.
Yeah, Mike, it looks like I didn't bring that folder down with me, but I can email that information out to council.
Thank you.
Councilor Lyson?
Yes, I just wanted to, for the public's sake, one of the basic tenets of the capital improvement program is that it should be seen as a working document that sets the stage for the city's annual operating budget process, and adoption does not constitute approval and/or funding of the various projects within the program. So again, it's a planning tool. It's still a work in progress, a working document, and really the funds get committed when the council passes the budget on a year-to-year basis. So, but I do think that it's helpful to take a look at the future and, you know, in a planning type of way to kind of see where we're at. I agree, it's easy to kick things out to the future, and sometimes they get out there and they all can't get funded for sure. But again, I just wanted to characterize what the LCIP is about. Thank you.
Councilor Lyson? Anyone else? Call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, order authorizing the city administrator to execute a new option agreement to purchase Bates Mill number 5, the Weave Shed with Bates Mill LLC.
So moved.
Second.
There we go.
Didn't mean to be premature.
Motion by Councilor Cludier, seconded by Councilor
Threw
Lyson.
me off, like.
Sorry.
Take it away.
Take it away. City Council has been working on this for a while. We had a workshop about a week ago, and coming out of that, we really took direction from the council. Earlier tonight, we had a workshop on this, an executive session. I handed out the proposed option, which will be for a 3-year period. If any members of the public would like a copy, in a nutshell, what we're proposing is that this be a 3-year option. Tom Platts would have the ability to buy it for $1 during that 3-year period. For the first 2 years of the option period, he will have exclusivity, where no one else would be able to buy it. In the 3rd year of the option, if some other entity comes on the scene that has both tenants, has the financing behind it, and at the city's determination, it is, it's a viable project that's going to be beneficial to the city at least the same level as what Mr. Platts has been working on, the city would have the option to get into an agreement with a third party at that point. If we did move to a third party, an important point is that the tenants would need to be different than the people that Tom has been working with.
The YMCA has been a long-term tenant who remains committed to this project, is looking to start up some financing for it, and he has relatively recently begun conversations with the USM. The reason for the 2 years of exclusivity for the beginning of this option is really there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done, and to start on that, only to have it pulled away, didn't make sense for it, to be fair to Tom in that sense. Over the course of this 3-year option, we will be negotiating a joint development agreement, a parking agreement, a TIF agreement. We'd had drafts of all those under the initial iteration of this proposal, which was to get 200,000 square feet redeveloped in a short-term basis. And all of that was structured around building the parking garage, which there's been comments from both Planning Board and Finance about pushing off the parking garage. If we could do that, we'd like to. Most recent conversations with Tom, it is likely to happen more incrementally, which is the way the rest of the Bates Mill complex has been redeveloped. If the YMCA comes in early on, that would likely not trigger the need for another parking garage right out of the gate. We've got capacity in the existing garages that are close. So part of this 3-year option will also allow the city and Mr. Platts to really develop an agreement that makes sense for the long-term redevelopment of the project. Tom, is there anything?
I really have nothing to add. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions for Link or Mr. Platts? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
To the public.
Yes, my name is Carl Shalene. I live at 17 Cherrywood Drive, Mr. Mayor, councilors. So for me, not a lot has changed over this past week. You know, I still need a shave, and I still support Mill 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone else? Okay, back to the council. Councilor Marco?
My reasons for not supporting this particular option is because I've seen it for so long already. I was on the Finance Committee back in 2009 when it came to us for demolition. Didn't seem as though anybody within the city understood that there was a performance lien on the property until about 6 months later, which cost the taxpayers of Lewiston $80,000 to breach that contract. I assume that for a number of years following that, nothing could be done because the performance liens continued to exist. Then we got into these options, which each year it was going to be the last one. And now we're looking at a 3-year option to lock up the property for at least 2 years of exclusivity, and all for $1. In the private sector, we don't see $1 options. And for that reason, I'm not going to support this.
Councilor Pettengill?
Just point of clarification, I guess. The date is incorrect on the council order that we all got. It's supposed to be 2018. It says 2017. Not on the one that we just received.
Well, it does.
Everything else looks okay throughout the option agreement, but I just wanted to point that out. But I'm still very in support of redeveloping the mill, so go Mill 5.
And so, Mr. Mayor, if we could just take this opportunity just to piggyback on what Councilor Pettengill said, just to remind the council that you received a revised version of the order earlier tonight. So the motion before you was not to adopt the one that was in your book on Friday, but to adopt the one that you received this evening, just so we're clear with that. And that's the one that Heather passed out to the council tonight, to the public.
That is the one that still says 2017 at the top.
It does, yes.
Do we have to amend that, or?
No, we don't. Not substantial to the body of the order, thank you.
Excellent. Good catch. Councilor Cludier?
So, I just want to clarify, so the option on the building is $1, but can you just fill us in on to how much you've actually invested in this property over time?
Well, between myself and some of the tenants we've been talking to and all the studies, it's somewhere in the range of $600,000 to $700,000 that has been invested in the project so far.
Great, thank you.
Okay, call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
No.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6 to 1.
Agenda item number 8.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 8, order authorizing the city administrator to execute any and all documents necessary for closing in regard to the donation agreement for the Lewiston Canal System between the city of Lewiston and Brookfield White Pine Hydro, including but not limited to the exhibits to the donation agreement as amended. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the city administrator to execute any and all documents necessary for closing in regard to the donation agreement for the Lewiston Canal System between the city of Lewiston and Brookfield White Pine Hydro, including but not limited to the exhibits to the donation agreement as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Lyson, seconded by Counselor Cloutier. Questions from council? Counselor Marcotte?
Question about the canal chases. How many go under buildings?
Let's see, there were generating capacity in Mill 5, the Hill Mill, where's Link? Hill Mill. Yeah, Upper A, which is, yeah. Yeah, Upper A and the Red Shack are a little bit different. They're existing small facilities around the canal system, not part of a big mill complex. But Bates Mill, the Hill Mill, the Continental Mill, yeah, Upper A, which is attached to the Androscoggin Mill. Red Shop is on the canals at the lower canal. There's also Bates Lower, which is down adjacent to where Museum LA's property would locate. That was a standalone generating facility down there as well.
Reason I ask is if there were any major mills. I think you mentioned the Hill Mill. What would happen if there was something went wrong with one of the walls? Would we be responsible or one of the predecessors?
We would be responsible for the intake as it goes through the facility. So all of these are in effectively in penstocks that transmit water through the mill itself. And if there was a problem with the penstock going through, we would be responsible for that. The easy solution for some of them is simply to close them off at the point where there's a problem. But yes, we would have some responsibility for deterioration or problems with those facilities as they pass through those mills.
And do we have an inspection report anywhere?
We have a whole bunch of reports, yes. We have, I'm going to say probably over the last 10 to 15 years, there have probably been 3 major analyses done. One of the requirements that Brookfield had to go through was to go through a facilities assessment. And as a part of that facilities assessment, to identify improvements and actions that they were required to take to ensure that their facilities were not a safety hazard and were not going to be a problem, at least in the short term. All of that work has been done by Brookfield. So we have an awful lot of information documented about the condition of the canal system.
So we don't anticipate any surprises, heavy costs right out of the gate in the first couple of years?
Not in the early years. The initial costs that we will probably see have more to do with what I call the aesthetic improvements along the banks. Our plan is to start taking care of the banks where they're overgrown and to try to start cleaning up some of that material so that it's not as unsightly as it is now, and that would be a continuing, ongoing maintenance project.
And have we addressed the ownership of all of the bridges? There was a discussion about that.
To the extent that anybody can figure them out, yes. And we have a complete list of all of the encumbrances on the property. There are some number of easements, for example. There are some leases that affect the properties. We have a complete list of those that was compiled. We've looked at all of the deed records associated with it, so we have a pretty good understanding. I will tell you, for example, nobody knows who owns the Beach Street Bridge. Nobody's really claiming the Beach Street Bridge, and we plan to put a new one in there, so I guess it's gonna become ours.
And if I remember right, the LCIP has 150,000 in it for fiscal year 19 for the canal system.
That's correct, and that is primarily to buy the equipment that we're going to be looking at to do some of the maintenance of the spaces along, the green spaces along the canal system.
And although I'm committed to bringing that $15 million, which I understand tonight is like $14 million with the cuts that the school made, as close to the $7 million as possible. But even in light of that, if we support the canal tonight, I want to make sure that we make a commitment to putting something into it each fiscal year.
I'm going to make one comment. One of the first meetings I went to, before I even started here, was in Phil Netto's office. He was on the phone, along with Link, talking to folks at CMP about trying to purchase the canal system. So this is something that started 10-plus years ago.
I'm sorry to admit, yes.
And has been a very long process. We've come a huge way. Originally, the original proposal from the city was to purchase the canals. They are now being donated. So I think things changed over time. We got a much better agreement than we would have gotten if we had gone into any of the earlier agreements, including one that we almost went into with Florida Power and Light. So it has been a long process, and I think we should all kind of pat ourselves on the back that we stuck through it and got through it, and kind of celebrate it a little bit, that this could become a way for us to do some stuff down there that will make the area both aesthetically more pleasing for our residents and also for developers who want to see things happen in that area of the community, as was outlined in the Riverfront Island Master Plan that we had so much involvement in. So I think it's kind of exciting. And I wasn't going to say anything, but I talked briefly to Marty today. He said, boy, you know, you ought to say something and celebrate a little bit that we finally got this done. So.
Ed touched upon it lightly. He really underplayed really the effort he's put into it. The deal that you've approved is so much better than that very first deal we started with. I mean, it's 180 degrees from where it was. So it's a very beneficial agreement for the city. So hats off to the Ed and the councils that blessed it in the past.
Council West.
This was subject to a family discussion, and Link, you know my daughter. She's expecting skating, kayaking, and then my wife said, well, why not water fire like down in Providence, too? Gondolas and stuff like that, and music. So, and then the talk was, let's get those ugly fences down, too, and I think that's part of the process along the way. So she's going to hold you to that, by the way. So thank you.
Thanks for the warning.
I just have this picture of Link riding a gondola singing in Italian. It's going really south here. Any comments from the public?
It's not pretty.
Actually, Link plays the banjo, so he'd have to be singing Italian while he's playing the banjo.
Yeah, we
I think that's an even worse picture. Anyone else from the council? Call the roll.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, authorization to accept transfer of forfeiture funds. Requested action that pursuant to Title 15, Maine Revised Statutes Annotated, Section 5824, subsection 3, and Section 5822, 4A, the City Council hereby acknowledges and approves of the transfer of $2,385 or any portion thereof in the case of the State of Maine versus John Oberton. Court records, the transfer of $2,301 or any portion thereof in the case of the State of Maine versus Stephen Locke, as defined in court records, and the transfer of $1,299 or any portion thereof in the case of the State of Maine versus Donna Pagnotti, as defined in court records, being funds forfeited pursuant to the court process. It is further acknowledged that these funds shall be credited to the City of Lewiston Drug Enforcement Account Program.
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Marcotte. Questions from the council? No public. And call the roll.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Reports and updates, Counselor Ray.
School committee, just a couple notes. At our February 12th meeting, the facilities subcommittee slashed their capital improvement plan by half by pushing some things out. So again, credit to them. We also heard about the state educational subsidy calculation, which is a 6-page formula for determining how much the state will give us and how much we need to raise through taxes. February 26th is our next meeting. At 5:30, the subcommittees of teaching and learning, technology, and administrative will be meeting, and we will have a regular meeting at 6:40.
Any other reports, updates? Counselor Lyson?
Yes, I'd make a motion to enter an executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 405-6D to discuss labor negotiations regarding the Maine Association Police Patrol Unit and the Lewiston Police Supervisory Command Unit.
Second motion.
All in favor?